Welcome to WeatherGod's Wisdom, Season 2, the 2020 hurricane season. Very happy to welcome you all back to my channel, and in such a early fashion because we are tracking a subtropical cyclone slash tropical cyclone threat to develop here south of the Keys and north of Cuba. And throughout the day, it has been gradually organizing into a stronger disturbance. It's still not a tropical depression, and I do not believe that it will be for the next 24 hours. And I don't think the National Hurricane Center does either. It does have a 60% chance within the next 48 hours to develop and has an 80% chance to develop within the next 5 days. So it does warrant watching, especially considering its proximity to the Florida coast and the Bahamas and down the line, Carolinas. And so let's get to looking at this thing. We're also going to be looking at Invest 91B, which is in the Bay of Bengal and has potential to become a catastrophically powerful cyclone that will impact a very large populated area. And we will be tracking that next. But first, let's get into Invest 90L. All right, so throughout the day, the system has been spitting off mid-level circulations as convection has intensified over a vortmax that has been somewhere in here, 850 millibar surface vortmax, and it has not really tightened up much. Only in the mid levels has it really started to congeal, but that has been off and on at most, and it's not really going to start organizing until it can fire convection over the largely sheared vorticity maximum that is sitting south of the Keys right now. And it's not really a vorticity maximum because, I mean, it is, but it's not doing much in terms of turning, because you can see these surface showers here east of the Keys are being pushed still to the west, and nothing is really turning too much. The surface shower here is moving slightly to the southwest, which I guess warrants a slight turning that's happening in here. It's not really too much, and there's nothing coming to the east or south yet. And that is what we need to watch for, these surface showers that are turning to the east. This is not a very well organized system right now, and that is largely due, if we zoom out and check water vapor imagery, thank you, this is not Sparta, CyclonicWX for WX, for the water vapor imagery and all the satellite imagery that I'm using right now. You can see why. There's a lot of shear and a ton of dry air situated to the west of the system that is being imparted directly into the surface spin. And this will continue throughout the next day or so. And this should, as it kind of works its way north, it should drift into a more moist environment, and has the chance to develop here somewhere south of the Florida Peninsula, and it will work its way up into the Gulf Stream waters just south of the Carolinas over the next 3 days, and we will be looking at that right now. On the GFS model forecast, you can see this system over the next 24 hours just drifts to the northeast and ends up east of Miami, and is still very broad. You can see it is very weighted to the east, which is preventing the system from really kind of closing off, and it does actually close off at the 36-hour mark. We have a low pressure system of 1007, and it's still very weighted to the east, so this is a very weak system. I do not expect this to be super strong when it is passing close to Florida. I don't even think this could be a tropical storm at this time. It might be a tropical storm, but regardless, the effects on Florida are going to be kind of limited. Just largely heavy rain. You can see that heavy rain passing just to the south of the mainland Florida, but hitting the Keys. So for the next day and a half, really a lot of rain is going to be passing over Florida. And the surface low develops and moves northward, and it should be wobbling almost due east at certain points because of how weighted the system is. There's a lot of convection to the east because of the shear that is being imparted on it in the upper levels and the relative favorability for the convection to pop off here just to the east of the system and to the west of Bermuda. And as that convection kind of dies off, we can expect the system to kind of intensify a little bit because the shear environment for the system is pretty light all the way through. It's kind of stuck between two jet streams in here, and there's a ridge that's in place over here that helps the system kind of ventilate a little bit. There's a pseudo anticyclone. I can't really call it an anticyclone because it's not. I mean, there's just some anticyclonic flow that's in the northern side of the system, which allows it to ventilate a little bit and intensify just a tad. There's not too much because if we look at the moisture dynamics, humidity is still very dry air in here, and dry air will be wrapping into the circulation quite a bit. And if it can close off that dry air, it can intensify a little bit over the Gulf Stream, and you can see that it closes off this dry air around 4 days out and becomes a pretty strong tropical storm. It still remains off the coast of the Carolinas, but GFS has been trending slightly east or west, so that means that it could have a brush with the Carolinas while it is a strong tropical storm, which is not ideal. But for now, Carolinas would probably just see a little bit of rain and gusty winds and some elevated surf at most. So the future holds for this. That holds for the system. I can't speak today, dude. Is gonna drag this thing out to sea and kind of dissipate it as dry air is flooded into the system thanks to the jet stream. As this large upper trough kind of sits in here, and the jet stream just puts a bunch of mid-level flow of dry air into it and kind of kills it off screen here. So that's 174 hours out, so a lot can change with that. Maybe it'll still be alive, but I really doubt it. That's all for the system for now until we get a bunch of clarity onto where this surface circulation develops. Because this is a very broad system, maybe it develops here, maybe it develops there, maybe it develops in the middle of all this. Until it figures itself out, wherever the surface circulation ends up developing will ultimately determine how close it gets to the United States East Coast, and what we're talking here is mainly the Carolinas. But until it develops, there's not a whole lot of certainty. Just know that it will take a while to get strong if it ever does. So that's it for the storm. We're going to go to 91B now, which is part of the pre-monsoon thing that happens in May, where there's a couple of tropical cyclones that happen in the Bay of Bengal. This has the potential to be catastrophically powerful. And it could be a really big catastrophe for the people in Bangladesh and in Kolkata, India, and anywhere in western Myanmar. You can see that the convection is firing rather deeply today. It's a little displaced from the surface circulation, which is why this system is not yet a tropical cyclone, although it should be designated within the next 12 hours or so. That's my guesstimation. But, I mean, this deep convection is eventually going to lead to pressure falls over an area, and then the surface circulation is going to form, and the storm will really start to take off within the next 24, 36 hours. Spoilers. But you can see 6 hours from now, very broad surface circulation that will eventually tighten up as it kind of just sits over the next day and a half. And it will continue to sit until a mid-level flow ultimately like just pushes it to the north, as a mid-level ridge will build in here. And it's not really well seen on here, but our upper level ridge actually will be building in here, and you can see that actually very well on this 200 millibar wind on tropicaltidbits.com. And you can see this ridge really strengthens as it goes along with the system. The upper level anticyclone is a little displaced to the east of the system, and it will travel with the system, which means that there may be some mid-level shear that affects this system that could hamper it a little bit, but there's not going to be like enough to really prevent the system from becoming like extraordinarily powerful. There is a bunch of really warm water in here, like Gulf of Mexico level warm water, and there's not a whole lot of dry air. There may be some like moderately dry air that gets imparted into the system from the south, but any dry air would be very little. And so what I'm saying is there's not a whole lot stopping the system from becoming very strong. And over the next 5 or 6 days, people in Bangladesh need to be like preparing for a really bad storm, because there's not going to be much that gets in the way of the system other than eyewall replacement cycles that temporarily lower the intensity but make the storm larger at the same point. So really a bad situation here for Bangladesh if this verifies. You can see on the GFS, even low res, it still has it as like a 950 millibar storm. Most intensity models have this at like 920. Let me actually double check that. They have this as like really strong. You can see 952 millibars with 73 knots, and typically they run low on this, so our HWRF runs pretty low, but I mean, you can see this system is like really strong, and it would be a really bad situation. You can see GFS has this almost a category 3 strength, and with this pressure, it's probably on the high res like close to 120 knots. I mean, this is 936 millibars like right before landfall. So the only thing that would like hamper this is the shallow water that's in here due to the delta, and the relatively shallow sea surface temperatures. Again, that's like very minute and ultimately decides, let me go back to regions here to get it further out, decides whether or not it's a category 4 or category 5. And this is, I mean, you see this is like a very large system in here, so it's going to bring in a lot of water. We're not going to play that because it's without, it's beyond 5 days, and 5 days is like pretty much the end of accuracy. But at the end of this run on 5 days, you have a very large and very powerful cyclone heading towards a hugely populated area. So this is bad. So I will be tracking this along with probably a bunch of other people to ensure that this is highlighted. But we'll check a sounding here just to show you guys that there's not a whole lot of dry air in here. There's a little bit of dry air in the upper levels, but that is very minuscule, and there's actually a little bit of shear in here, but there's not like an overwhelming amount, and so most of the shear is actually helping the system because of the anticyclone. But if it comes in from the south, like, let's see. If the shear is coming in from the south, that would, yeah, because see, there's like 41 knots of shear. So that would limit any intensification. But as you can see, most of it is actually helping ventilate the system. So, but too much can be bad. So we will see what happens to the system. It has to, of course, develop first, but we will see how bad the system gets. Hopefully, it remains below the status that is being forecasted by the GFS, because 933 millibars at landfall, or very close to landfall, is like having a Hurricane Andrew go into Bangladesh, which is really, really bad. We do not want this to happen. So, anyway, yeah, that is all for this episode of Weather God's Wisdom. I might start doing severe weather stuff. We're gonna have a little cutoff low come in here and give us a lot of rain in Texas, like almost 6 inches of rain on Saturday. That's all we have for Texas. Severe weather going on right here. Otherwise, that's it for now. I'll be back tomorrow with a video, and thank you to all the sites that help like provide all this imagery and all this all these model forecasts and everything. Really appreciate it. You guys do a lot of work for the weather community, and that, have a great night and stay safe.